The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Island of Sodor.
Thomas and the Billboard. Knapford is the biggest station on the island of Sodor. All the engines love its bustling busyness. Today was a very special day. It was Knapford Station's birthday and there was going to be a grand party. All the engines were very excited. They were to have their photograph taken. The photograph was going to be put up on a billboard. Thomas felt very proud.
I've never been on a billboard before.
But the photographer was having trouble fitting all the engines into the photograph.
Move back a bit there, James. And you forward, Percy. Yes, that's good, that's good. Now, Diesel, can you move in?
Diesel moved in. The camera flashed. Thomas didn't know that Diesel had rolled right in front of him. And neither did Diesel. Later that day, Thomas puffed into Marron Station to pick up the new billboard. He was very excited. But when Thomas saw it, he was very disappointed. Diesel's right in front of me, Thomas thought sadly. No one can see me at all. Thomas puffed towards Knapford. Diesel moved in front of me on purpose, huffed Thomas to himself. Thomas felt cross. He wasn't looking where he was going. Then there was trouble. There was a cow on the line. Thomas turned quickly into a siding just in time. He hit the buffers and the billboard flew into the lake. Thomas went to tell the photographer what had happened. Don't worry, I'll take another photograph. Tell all the engines to meet me at Tidmouth Sheds. Thomas was about to set off. Then he saw Diesel. Thomas knew he should tell Diesel about the new photograph, but Thomas was worried. What if Diesel spoils this one too, thought Thomas. So Thomas didn't tell Diesel. Soon all the engines except Diesel were back at Tidmouth. Gordon was cross. Mr. Giggles, the famous clown, is coming to the party tonight. I must collect him from the airport. I must not be late.
And I have to pick up the brass band from Brendam Docks.
And I have to collect the bunting and decorations from Wellsworth.
OK, I'll fetch the photographer right away.
Thomas was steaming to Marron. Then he saw Diesel. Diesel was puffing straight to Tidmouth. Thomas was worried. Now Diesel would find out about the new photograph. So Thomas turned onto a branch line and he raced back to Tidmouth.
There's been a mistake. You'll all have to come back later.
The engines were very cross. Soon they had all gone, and Diesel trundled straight by. Later, Thomas had gathered the engines again. Then Thomas went to Marron to collect the photographer. Just as the photographer was climbing on board, Thomas saw Diesel. Now Diesel would see the photographer and he would find out about the new photograph. So Thomas wheeshed lots of steam. It billowed from his boiler and filled the whole station. So Diesel didn't see the photographer, and he trundled straight by.
The steam has made my camera wet. I'm sorry, sir. We'll have to wait for it to dry. Tell the engines to come back later to Tidmouth.
So all the engines came back later, instead of doing their jobs. At last the photographer was ready. No one had noticed Diesel wasn't there. Thomas was very relieved. But just then, Diesel oiled round the bend. Diesel was surprised to see all the engines. He screeched to a halt. Rolls of bunting went everywhere.
No one told me there was another photograph. But I asked Thomas to tell everyone.
All the engines looked at Thomas. Thomas felt terrible. The fat controller was very cross. Gordon, you were meant to pick up Mr. Giggles, the famous clown. Emily, you were meant to pick up the brass band. And James, you were meant to pick up the bunting and decorations. None of you arrived, so Diesel had to do all your jobs. And now he is late to do his own work. Thomas was very upset.
It's all my fault, sir. I didn't want Diesel to know about the new photograph. In the last one, he moved right in front of me, on purpose. I did not. The photographer told me to move.
I did. Perhaps you rolled too far. Thomas knew then he'd made a mistake.
I'm sorry, Diesel. I was wrong to think you did it on purpose. And I'm very sorry for causing all this trouble, sir.
Soon, all the engines were lined up. The new photograph was taken.
Sir, if I do all Diesel's jobs, can he collect the new billboard?
That's a wonderful idea, Thomas. Diesel agreed. For the rest of the day, Thomas worked hard. He did all Diesel's jobs. And Diesel picked up the new billboard, just in time for the celebrations. It was a wonderful party. There were clowns and a brass band. Diesel and Thomas agreed that the new billboard was the best billboard they'd ever seen. It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Island of Sodor.
Tram Trouble. Thomas the tank engine and Toby the steam tram are very good friends. Toby always tells Thomas when he's worried, and Thomas is always happy to help Toby. One bright morning, Thomas puffed into Arlesdale End. Hello, Toby. You look happy. The Fat Controller has asked me to lead the parade at the first Great Waterton Festival. Thomas was pleased for his friend. That's because you're the only steam tram on Sodor. Everyone will cheer for you. Thomas puffed quickly away. The Fat Controller was waiting for him at Great Waterton. He had 3 important jobs to do. Thomas raced into Great Waterton, fizzling fireboxes. Waiting on the rails was another steam tram. Thomas, this is Flora. She's the new steam tram on Sodor. Flora smiled her sunniest smile.
Hello, Thomas. Hello.
Flora is to lead the parade with Toby. Thomas gasped. Take Flora to meet Toby. Then Toby must bring Flora back here for the parade. Thomas was worried. Toby thinks he's leading the parade all by himself, thought Thomas. Now he will be very upset. I must keep Flora away from Toby until after the parade. Thomas and Flora arrived at the junction. Suddenly, an idea flew into Thomas's funnel. I will take Flora to do one of my jobs before we go to Arsdale End, he chuffed to himself. By then, Toby will have left to lead the parade.
Let's go to the woodyard first. It won't take long. That sounds exciting.
So they raced away to the woodyard. Thomas collected a flatbed of heavy logs.
Now we can meet Toby.
Flora was pleased. Hooray! She peeped prettily. They set off.
Toby, Toby, you must go. Hurry now to lead the show,
Thomas puffed to himself.
Flora
and Thomas waited at the junction to Toby's shed. It looked empty.
Come on, Flora.
Flora pumped her pistons perkily. Suddenly, Thomas saw steam coming from Toby's shed. Cinders and ashes, he thought. Toby's still there. Toby mustn't see Flora.
Flora, I've just remembered. We must go to the quarry first.
Flora was surprised.
If you say so, Thomas.
And they puffed away. At the shunting yard, Thomas was coupled up to the stone trucks. Now we can meet Toby. That made Flora very happy. Toby, Toby, please have gone. Lead the show, be proud and strong, Thomas puffed to himself. Thomas and Flora arrived at Arsdale End. This time, Thomas was sure Toby's shed was empty.
Come on, Flora.
Oh, no, thought Thomas. Toby's still there. Toby mustn't see Flora.
Flora, we're late to pick up my load. We must go to the docks. If you say so, Thomas.
And they puffed quickly away. At the docks, Thomas was coupled up to his large load to take to Great Waterton. Thomas was sure Toby would now be leading the parade.
Come on, Flora.
Flora's axles ached, but Thomas steamed strongly. Thomas and Flora puffed up to the junction. Then there was trouble. Flora had chuffed too far. She had run out of coal.
I'm sorry, Thomas.
Flora's wheels wobbled weakly. Thomas felt bad. He knew it was his fault. Then he heard a chuff and a puff and a ring of a bell. It was Toby.
Thomas, I've been waiting for you. Who's that?
Cinders and ashes. Toby had met Flora. Neither of them was at the parade. The fat controller would be very cross. Thomas couldn't have felt worse.
Flora, this is Toby. Toby, this is Flora.
Toby looked very happy. Thomas was surprised.
I wanted to tell you, Thomas, that I was too scared to lead the parade all by myself, but now Flora and I can lead it together.
I thought I knew what you wanted, Toby, but I was wrong. Now, Thomas had to quickly put right his mistake.
Flora, take my coal. I'll pick up more. Puff as fast as you can to Great Waterton.
Toby and Flora soon puffed away. Later, Thomas chuffed in to Great Waterton. The parade was ready to leave. Thomas's flatbed was uncovered. Flora gasped. She had a wonderful new tram car. Toby was pleased. Thomas watched his two friends lead the first Great Waterton parade. The children cheered. The brass band boomed. Now I have another best friend, and she's a steam tramp too. And Thomas smiled his happy. Don't go back. Thomas is a busy engine. He is very good at shunting. Thomas thinks he can shunt backwards and forwards faster than any other engine. One day, Thomas and Diesel were waiting at the quarry. The quarry manager arrived. Thomas, I have a very important job for you. You must fill lots of trucks with stone. Henry will arrive soon to collect them. Yes, sir. I have an important job too. I'm sure I'll fill my trucks first. No, you won't. I can beat a steamy any day. I'll race you to the hopper. Thomas was sure he could win the race and do his job. But Diesel wanted the race to be tricky. He had a devious idea. We have to go backwards. All right, I'll win. So the two engines raced away, backwards. Steamies are fast and steamies are first, Thomas huffed to himself. Thomas was determined to win. Thomas and Diesel took separate tracks to the hopper. I'm sure to win now, Thomas thought to himself. Thomas steamed towards the hopper. I'm first, but Thomas couldn't see that Diesel had arrived first behind him. Thomas bashed into Diesel. Stone poured down from the hopper. Thomas was covered from funnel to footplate in dust. Ha ha, silly slow steamy, I won the race. Thomas wanted to beat Diesel. We'll have another race to the washdown, and this time I'll win. Well, we still have to race backwards. So together the two engines whooshed away. Thomas and Diesel raced buffer to buffer. Steamies are fast and steamies are first, huffed Thomas to himself. Mavis was at the washdown. She was enjoying a soapy soak, but Thomas couldn't see Mavis. He raced backwards into the washdown and biffed into Mavis, who came off the rails. Ooh! Rattling rods! Ooh! Then Diesel rolled in. I won. Thomas forgot about Mavis. Thomas was enjoying being the winner. Yeah, well, we both won a race. We must have one more. Thomas was no longer thinking about his job. All right, let's race to the engine sheds. Whoever wins this race is the fastest. Diesel revved his engine. Thomas pumped his pistons. And the two engines raced quickly away, backwards. Thomas steamed into the lead. Steamies are fast and steamies are first, he huffed to himself. Thomas had to win this race, but Diesel rattled alongside him. Then there was trouble. Harry and Bert were enjoying a rest at the engine sheds, but Thomas and Diesel couldn't see them. They raced backwards towards Harry and Bert. With a crash and a bash, Thomas and Diesel smashed Harry and Bert right through the back of the engine sheds. Stones and timber flew everywhere. Bust my buffers! Oh no! Then Henry arrived. I've come to collect my train. Your train isn't ready. Then the yard manager arrived. Thomas, you have pushed Mavis off the rails and Harry and Bert right through the back of the engine sheds. Thomas felt worse than ever. Oh no, it's all my fault. I should have done my job and not raced against Diesel. Come on, let's have one more race. No, Diesel, I have an important job to do. Thomas puffed over to Henry.
I'll fill your trucks as fast as I can. Your train will soon be ready.
And Thomas chuffed quickly away. Thomas felt terrible.
I must work very hard to put everything right, he thought to himself.
Thomas shunted the trucks under the hopper. Soon they were all filled. And Henry puffed happily away with his train. Then Thomas collected Rocky. Rocky lowered Mavis back onto the tracks.
I'm sorry I bashed you. I was trying to win a race.
Mavis was relieved to be back on track. Next, Thomas shunted Rocky over to the sheds. Harry and Bert were soon back on the rails.
I'm sorry I biffed you. I should have done my job instead of trying to be the fastest.
Then Diesel rolled in.
We must clear all the trucks of broken stones.
Yes, Thomas. At last, all the trucks were loaded with broken rubble from the sheds. So together, Thomas and Diesel shunted the trucks as quickly as they could. At last, all the jobs were done.
We still don't know who's the fastest. Let's have another race. All right, but this time we must go forwards.
So the two engines raced away to the quarry gates. And they both arrived together. Saved you. Thomas is a really useful tank engine. Whenever anyone is in trouble, Thomas is always there to help. And because Thomas helps, deliveries are made on time without confusion and delay. One day, Thomas was at Maithwaite Station. The Fat Controller arrived on board Percy. Thomas, I need you to collect a very important passenger. He's a fireman and a hero. He rescued Lady Hatt's cat from a tree.
A hero?
Now we're going to give him a medal. Thomas puffed away to collect the fireman. He was very excited. He was going to meet a real hero. On the way, Thomas saw lots of children at the bus stop. They were excited too.
We're going to see the fireman. Bertie the bus is taking us to the medal ceremony.
Up ahead, Thomas saw a water tower through the trees. The water tower was starting to wobble. Thomas saw Duck was right next to it.
Oh no! The water tower's going to fall on Duck! I must rescue him!
Thomas blew his whistle loudly.
Quick, Duck! Move now!
Duck puffed quickly forward as the water tower crashed to the ground.
I rescued you.
No, you didn't. Rocky was putting the water tower on my flatbed, and now it's smashed. Thomas hadn't seen Rocky. Rocky had been hidden behind the trees.
I'm sorry, but I don't have time to help you. I have to collect the fireman. He's a hero.
Later, Thomas saw a tree. It had fallen onto the tracks. That looks dangerous, thought Thomas. I must go and tell the signalman. Thomas backed up to the signal box.
There's a tree on the line. The engines must take another track.
The signalman changed the points. Just then, Harvey raced towards the junction. He changed tracks and puffed down the other line. Harvey was surprised. Thomas was very pleased with himself. I rescued Harvey, Thomas thought proudly. Now I'm a hero. Thomas chuffed on to collect the firemen. He saw Donald and Douglas stuck behind the fallen tree. I hope Harvey gets here soon. Aye, we can't go anywhere until he moves this tree. Thomas knew he'd made a mistake. Oh no, I made Harvey take the other track. I'm not a hero at all. We need Harvey. I'm sorry, but I don't have time to find Harvey. I have to collect the fireman. He's a hero. Then Thomas saw Toby. Smoke and steam billowed from Toby's axles. Toby's broken down on Gordon's express line. Oh no, here comes Gordon. I have to rescue Toby. So Thomas puffed quickly back to the points. He changed over onto the express line. Thomas buffered up behind Toby and shunted him as fast as he could. Ooh, help! Don't worry, Toby. Thomas shunted Toby off the express line and into a siding. Gordon chuffed past. He didn't see Toby. I rescued you. No, you didn't. Gordon was bringing an engineer to fix me. Thomas knew he'd made another mistake. I haven't rescued anyone. I'm not a hero. And now the fireman won't get to the medal ceremony on time. Thomas felt terrible. Just then, Percy puffed up. Percy, will you go and pick up the fireman for me? Percy was very pleased. You'll have to hurry. The medal ceremony starts soon. So Percy raced away. Thomas knew what he had to do now. Thomas collected the engineer from Gordon and took him to fix Toby. Then Thomas found Harvey. He took Harvey to move the fallen tree. Harvey soon cleared the track. Thomas puffed sadly back to Tidmouth. Then he saw Bertie the bus. The children were standing around him. What's the matter? I'm stuck in the mud. Now I can't take the children to the medal ceremony. Shall I take the children for you? Yes, please. So all the children climbed on board Annie and Clarabelle, and Thomas puffed away. Thomas arrived at the medal ceremony just in time. The Fat Controller and Lady Hatt gave the fireman his medal. The children were very happy. You're a hero. And you're our hero, Thomas. Thomas the hero beamed from buffer to buffer. Thomas puts the brakes on. It was a busy time on the Island of Sodor. The Sodor River Bridge was being rebuilt. Thomas had been chosen to help the builders. He was very busy and very proud. Thomas was at the yards. He was excited. This is the last delivery. Then the bridge will be finished. Thomas, you must be careful with these blocks. They were made especially for the bridge. There are no more like them anywhere. Yes, sir. And Thomas chuffed carefully out of the yard. Thomas had to stop at a signal, but when he applied his brakes, he heard a squeaking sound. Thomas was worried. Stanley was there. He was taking builders to the bridge. "Hello, Thomas. Your brakes don't sound good. Shall I take your load for you?" "No, thank you. I don't need any help." And Thomas chuffed quickly away. Next, Thomas saw Emily. "Slow down, Thomas. There's a sharp bend ahead." Thomas applied his brakes. The squeak was much louder, and his brakes wouldn't work properly. He raced round the bend much too fast. Thomas's wheels hit a bump in the track. Some of the special blocks bounced off his flatbed. But Thomas didn't know. He was worried about his squeaking brakes. "I know," he thought. "I'll puff more slowly." Thomas arrived at the top of a steep hill. As he went downhill, Thomas started to roll faster. Thomas applied his brakes, but they still weren't working properly, and the squeak was even louder. Gordon was puffing up the hill. "Slow down, Thomas." But Thomas couldn't slow down. He raced into an emergency siding and he hit the buffers with a big bump. More of the special blocks bounced off his flatbed down a steep bank. Now there was only one stack left. But Thomas still didn't notice. He was still worried about his squeaking brakes. Thomas set off once more, very slowly, for the bridge. Finally, Thomas saw the Sodor River Bridge ahead. The builders were waiting. "Hooray! I've made it! Here I come with the last special delivery!" Thomas knew he had to slow down now, but he couldn't. Thomas's brakes had stopped working altogether. "Fizzling fireboxes! What can I do?" With a clang and a crash, Thomas clanked off the rails. His flatbed bashed his buffers with a bump. The last of the special blocks fell from his flatbed into the water. "Cinders and ashes! I've lost some of the special blocks." "No, Thomas, you've lost them all. Now the bridge can't be finished." "Oh no, this is a disaster." The workmen attached chains to Stanley and Thomas. Slowly, Stanley pulled Thomas back to safety. Thomas was upset. "How did I lose the blocks?" he huffed to himself. Thomas remembered the bump on the bridge. It had made the last blocks fall from his flatbed. "Maybe the other blocks fell when I hit the other bumps," he thought. Thomas remembered where he had hit the buffers. Then he remembered going over the very bumpy track. Thomas knew what he had to do. "Stanley, will you help me, please?" "Of course, Thomas." "If you shunt me back along the track to the yard, I can show you where the other special blocks fell off." "That's a very good idea." "We must take Rocky with us. He can load the blocks onto your flatbed. Then you can bring them back to finish the bridge." Soon Stanley was chuffing along. He shunted Thomas behind him. And Murdoch shunted Rocky. They reached the bottom of the steep hill. "This is where I bashed the buffers with a bump." "Hooray! There they are!" Soon, Rocky had lifted the blocks onto Stanley's flatbed, and they all puffed on. Thomas and Stanley found the rest of the special blocks at the sharp bend, and Rocky set to work. Soon, Stanley shunted Thomas back into the yard, and he set off proudly with the special blocks.
Good luck, Stanley. I was silly not to have asked for your help. Thank you.
A worker looked at Thomas's wheels.
I've come to have my brakes fixed. They make a terrible squeak.
Later that day, Thomas chuffed back to the Sodor River Bridge. Thomas put his brakes on. There was no squeak at all. He stopped right beside Stanley.
My brakes are fixed now. So is the Sodor River Bridge. All thanks to my friend,
Stanley. Captain Marvel. The narrow-gauge engines in the hills of Sodor always want to hear stories. Their favourite ones are about a magical engine called Proteus. Peter Sam enjoys these stories most of all. One morning, Peter Sam puffed into the transfer yards. He was very excited.
Thomas is collecting the famous storyteller Mary Marvel. She is going to read at a special show.
All the little engines whistled and wheeshed.
I hope she tells stories about Proteus.
Then the thin controller arrived. He gave them all special jobs.
There is a lot to do. Please be back in good time for Miss Marvel.
The little engines peeped their whistles excitedly. Peter Sam collected the cream churns quickly.
I hope I'm the first to see Miss Marvel,
he huffed to himself. So Peter Sam raced away. The churns clinked and clanked, and his wheels clickety-clacked. Freddie was waiting at a junction. He had a lot to do.
You're in a hurry. Yes, I want to be the first engine to see Miss Marvel. I'm going to take a shortcut to the showground.
And Peter Sam raced away down an old twisty track. Peter Sam huffed and puffed to the top of the old twisty track. Whee! He whistled as he rolled down the other side. Then he saw a thick hedge across the track. Oh no! Peter Sam crashed through the hedge. With a clang and a prang, he hit something hard.
Fizzling fireboxes.
There, in front of Peter Sam, was a statue of Proteus. It was sitting on a rusty old flatbed. Some farm workers appeared to see what the noise was. Oh my, look! It's a statue of Proteus. It looks very old. Peter Sam thought his boiler would burst. Then an idea flew into his funnel. No one must see the statue before the show. It will be my wonderful surprise, and I will be the star of the show, he thought. Peter Sam tooted to the workers.
Please, can you cover the statue? I'll be back to collect it soon.
Peter Sam chuffed quickly back to the top of the old track. He stopped at the junction. Duncan chuffed up. He still had to collect benches for the show.
Duncan, when you come back, don't take the shortcut. There's something blocking the track.
Thank you very much. And Duncan chuffed off. Next, Mighty Mac pulled up. He still had to pick up flowers for the show.
When you come back, please don't take the shortcut. There's something blocking the track. Thank you.
And Mighty Mac chuffed off. Then Freddie puffed up. He still had to pick up lanterns for the show.
Freddie, when you come back, please don't take the shortcut. There's something blocking the track.
Ah, thank you. And he chuffed off. Peter Sam was pleased. Now the statue of Proteus was sure to be a surprise. The farm workers had covered the statue of Proteus. Peter Sam was coupled up to the flatbed. Peter Sam pumped his pistons. The cream churns were heavy, but Proteus' statue was even heavier. Peter Sam huffed and puffed to the top of the hill. Now I can roll down the other side, he thought. Peter Sam raced down the hill. There was a junction ahead.
Oh no, this load is too heavy. Help!
Peter Sam smashed into a buffer. The cream churns crashed. The junction was blocked.
Bubbling boilers. I'll never be the star of the show now. The other engines can't get through. I've spoiled everything for everyone.
Then Peter Sam heard the whistles of his friends. Duncan, Freddie and Mighty Mac arrived at the junction. They were surprised at the mess. Peter Sam felt very silly.
I'm sorry. I wanted to be the star of Miss Marvel's show.
He told them about finding the statue of Proteus. The engines gasped.
The statue belongs to us all. Please, will you help me take it to the show?
His friends were happy to help. Duncan chuffed away to find an engineer for Peter Sam. Mighty Mac puffed to tell Mr. Percival about the statue.
Freddie, will you take Proteus to the show?
Freddie was delighted.
It would be an honour.
Soon the engineer fixed Peter Sam's brakes.
Now you're ready to go, Peter Sam.
Later, Peter Sam collected fresh cream from the farm.
I know Miss Marvel's show has started, but all the other engines will be there to enjoy the statue.
Peter Sam chuffed his long way back. Peter Sam puffed up quietly. Miss Marvel was just finishing her last story. Oh my! The statue is still covered.
Today, one of our engines found something very special. So this is for all the little engines of the hills, because you are all special.
Everyone gasped at the wonderful statue. The engines whistled. Peter Sam smiled. We are all stars of the show. Duncan and the hot air balloon. It was a beautiful day in the hills of Sodor. It was also the Thin Controller's twins' birthday. Every year, Duncan gave the twins a special birthday ride. Duncan was excited. At the depot, Duncan was getting ready. He had to look his best. His special birthday flag had been fixed to his cab. Duncan was very proud of his flag. Mr. Percival came to see Duncan.
Shall I pick up the twins now? No, Duncan. This year I'm giving them a ride in a hot air balloon for their birthday.
Duncan was disappointed. He wanted to give the twins their birthday treat.
Duncan, you must collect a hot air balloon from the transfer yards. Yes, sir.
And he chuffed sadly away. Duncan pulled into the transfer yards. Thomas had brought the balloon from the docks. The balloon man was filling it with hot air.
Hello, Duncan.
Hello, Thomas.
That's a wonderful balloon.
You be sure to puff slowly and carefully. So Duncan huffed slowly away to Mr. Percival's house. On his way, Duncan rolled over a bumpy track. His flatbed clanked, rattled and jiggled. One of the ropes holding down the balloon came undone. Oh dear, thought Duncan. The bumpy track has jiggled the balloon loose. What shall I do? Then an idea flew into Duncan's funnel. If I jiggled the balloon more, it might float away. Then I could give the twins a ride today, and they could have a balloon ride tomorrow. So Duncan began to jiggle backwards and forwards over the bumpy track. The ropes loosened, and the balloon floated away. Hooray! And Duncan chuffed cheerily to the thin controller's house. Duncan puffed round a bend. Then he stopped. The hot air balloon had floated down. It was right in front of him on the track. Duncan bumped into the balloon. Flatten my funnel. Now what should I do? The basket wobbled and one of the sandbags fell off. It made the balloon rise up a little. Duncan was puzzled. He biffed the balloon again. More sandbags fell off. The balloon rose higher and floated away. Duncan was delighted. Duncan chuffed round another bend. Bus my buffet! There, on the bridge above him, was the balloon. I thought the balloon had floated away. What shall I do now? He thought. Duncan chuffed his biggest puff. The hot smoke from his funnel flew into the balloon. It made the balloon get bigger. This gave Duncan an idea. He huffed and puffed and puffed and huffed. The balloon got bigger and bigger and floated away. Duncan was delighted. He raced to the thin controller's house. The thin controller was waiting for him. Where's the hot air balloon, Duncan? It came loose, sir, and floated away. The thin controller was upset. Then there was trouble. The balloon floated down from the sky once again, straight towards the weather vane on the thin controller's roof. It burst on the sharp point. The balloon tumbled down. Fizzling fireboxes. Duncan was upset. Now the twins wouldn't have their balloon ride at all. It's all my fault, sir. I just wanted to give the twins their birthday treat, just as I always have. The thin controller was cross. Duncan, you were going to give the twins their birthday ride. You were going to pick them up and bring them here. Duncan felt even more upset. He wanted the twins to have a happy day. Sir, Peter Sam could pick up the twins. Then I will go and collect the balloon repairman. I'm sure he could fix the balloon. The thin controller thought this was a very good idea. So Duncan puffed quickly away. Duncan raced into Mountain Village Station. The balloon repairman was waiting. We must be quick, sir. The balloon has to be fixed before the twins get home. Duncan chuffed quickly back to the thin controller's house. The thin controller was very pleased to see them. The balloon repairman looked at the hole in the balloon. Oh dear, it's a very big hole. I don't have enough material to fix it. I know, sir. My birthday flag, it might just be big enough. The balloon repairman looked at Duncan's flag. Well, yes, Duncan. That would be perfect. The balloon repairman fixed the balloon just in time. Peter Sam arrived with the twins. They were delighted. Soon, Mr. Percival and the twins were floating high above the Island of Sodor. And Duncan felt so happy he thought his boiler would burst. Percy and the Bandstand. It was summertime on the Island of Sodor. The Fat Controller was in Great Waterton with Miss Jenny, Jack and Alfie. They were building a new bandstand. There was to be an open-air concert that evening. It was a special surprise for Lady Hatt. She loved brass band. All the engines were busy helping to make the day special. Edward was bringing special parcels. Thomas was bringing the banners and bunting. And Percy was bringing gravel for the pathways. Thank you, Percy. Right on time. Percy tried to shunt the trucks into place, but the trucks decided to be troublesome.
Hold back! Hold back!
Percy pushed and pushed, but the trucks wouldn't move. Percy knew what he had to do. He had to use his do-as-I-say whistle. So Percy blew his whistle long and loudly. The trucks knew that when Percy blew his do-as-I-say whistle, they had to do what he wanted. It meant Percy was in charge. Soon, all the trucks were in line. The Fat Controller bustled over to Percy.
I hope I didn't blow my whistle too loudly.
Not at all, Percy. You showed you were in charge. Percy was relieved. Now, I need you to collect Lady Hatt and bring her to the surprise concert. You must be here by tea time, understand?
Yes, sir.
You mustn't tell her where she's going, or it will spoil the surprise.
Don't worry, sir, I won't.
Percy had collected the carriage. He had to meet Lady Hatt at Maithwaite Station. It was a long way from Great Waterton. At last, Percy puffed into Maithwaite Station.
All aboard! Sir Topham Hatt has sent me to take you on a special trip.
Oh, that sounds lovely. First of all, I'd like to go to the duck pond. And Lady Hatt climbed on board. Percy was worried. He was supposed to take Lady Hatt to the bandstand. That was her special trip. Percy knew there wasn't time to go to the duck pond, but he didn't dare tell Lady Hatt. He thought she might be cross. So he puffed to the duck pond. Lady Hatt stood by the duck pond. She liked watching the ducks. They quacked and quacked. But Percy wanted them to be on their way. At last, Lady Hatt was back on board.
Next, I'd like to go to the windmill.
Percy was very worried. He knew there wasn't time to go to the windmill, but he didn't feel brave enough to tell Lady Hatt. So Percy puffed away. When they arrived at the windmill, Dusty Miller was there. Lady Hatt was pleased. Hello, Dusty. How are you?
We're going to be really late now,
Percy huffed to himself. At last, Lady Hatt finished talking to Dusty.
Now, Percy, I'd like to see the bluebells in the woods. It would be the perfect end to my special trip.
Percy was more worried than ever. Percy puffed to the woods, but with every puff he was getting later and later, and further from Lady Hatt's surprise. Percy and Lady Hatt arrived at the wood. Lady Hatt wandered off to admire the bluebells. Percy waited and waited. Suddenly, Thomas puffed up to Percy.
Where have you been, Percy? The Fat Controller is cross. He doesn't want Lady Hatt to be late.
Percy didn't want the Fat Controller to be cross. He didn't want the surprise to be spoiled.
Don't worry, I'll have her there on time.
So Thomas puffed away. Percy couldn't see Lady Hatt anywhere. Percy knew what he had to do. He had to use his do-as-I-say whistle. Percy blew his whistle long and loudly. Lady Hatt came out of the woods. "Percy, what do you want?"
I'm taking you to a surprise. That's your special trip. Oh, I love surprises. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought you'd be cross with me if I told you what to do. And now we might be late. We must hurry.
So Lady Hatt climbed quickly on board and Percy raced away. Percy steamed back to Great Waterton as fast as he could. The band was warming up. Jack and Alfie were very excited. Percy had arrived with Lady Hatt on time. The band started to play. Lady Hatt was delighted.
Oh, what a lovely surprise. Thank you for bringing me here on time, Percy.
And thank you, Percy, for keeping it a surprise.
Percy was pleased.
His do-as-I-say whistle had saved the day. It had been really useful, and so